Hello and welcome to another episode about the construction of the extension of Heaton Lodge Junction. My name's Simon George. Now this week I'm away for a few days, hence the video is a little bit shorter. But what I'm going to do is just let you catch up on progress on the overall layout, well of course the extension that I'm building. I'm kneeling on top of the baseboard as we speak because I'm track lifting. Actually, incidentally, before we go any further, I've just been over to Heaton Lodge Junction, the real place, and Network Rail are track lifting as well. So they're always copying what I'm doing. It just really bugs me sometimes. But anyway, I'm going to show you progress on the multi-storey car park, which some of you may not have seen. But we're really going to look at track lifting. And what else are we doing? We're going to look at the radio-controlled car, the radio-controlled Sherpa van rather, that just landed recently. So let's get cracking. So track lifting, well, I have got my work cut out, as you can see. So far, I've got, in fact, I'll just show you the other side first. I've been lifting this section, which actually only took me a day. You can see the track and the trains in the background, which is the new track that I've laid in the new formation of the new marshalling yard, which of course some of you will know is based on, not exactly, but certainly based on Healy Mills. And yeah, I've taken up all this and I've got this to take up, which is about another 40 meters. So I won't walk all the way along because by the time I've walked there and back, it'll be time for the video to finish. But yeah, there's quite a lot of track to lift. It's not one of my most enjoyable jobs, I've got to be honest. In fact, I really dislike it. But what's interesting is that as I've been lifting this track, I have found that some of the, well, a lot of the droppers that I originally soldered onto the rails, probably 2018, the solder joints are really brittle. And as I'm pulling the track up or lifting it, they're breaking off. And so I'm really going to have to improve my soldering skills. What I did do at the time was use quite thick gauge wire, which I'm not going to do next time because the thick gauge wire is really difficult, even with these crimping tags that you might be able to just pick up on the camera. They took a lot of soldering to the rail. It took a long time, but I was kind of paranoid about the fact that I needed thick gauge wire, but I'm not going to use this thick gauge wire next time. And I'm just going to make sure that these solder joints, I'm not going to use the crimp tags, by the way, I'm just going to solder the ends of the wire straight onto the rails. So that is a lesson learnt. What I've also been doing is adopting a new technique for lifting all this track, because I do want to reuse it. As I say, all this track, even though Pico, which was really good of them, as I've said before, donated a boatload of new track, especially the concrete stuff for me, for this project. I'm going to reuse this because obviously I've painted it as well, as you can see. So instead of using the pliers just to pick up or pick out or pull out every pin, what I'm going to do is just use this technique, which is just putting a screwdriver underneath, and then every one, I'm just going to go along and lift the track this way. So I can do one length of track in about 4 or 5 minutes. So I reckon the 2 weeks that I've scheduled myself, because I'm trying to work on strict timetables at the minute, the 2 weeks that I've got scheduled to take all of it up, I reckon I should just be able to do. Now once I've done that, I generally leave I do lose some lengths of track and damage them, but I think it's a small price to pay. I can cut some of the sleepers off anyway. It's horrible to watch, isn't it? I just don't like lifting track. It's like scrapping a locomotive. And as I said to you a few minutes ago, these droppers, I'm finding that a lot of them look as though they're connected, but on closer inspection they're not, which obviously accounts for the fact that I was having some poor electrical conductivity problems, and locos were stuttering over some of the flexible track, and even though, as I've just said, they looked as though they connected, the droppers, they weren't. So I'm just going to make sure next time I make a much better job. So that's track laying. As I say, I've taken all this up so far, and there's that in the distance is what I've already laid. But once the main job now is to take this existing track up, and I reckon it'll take about 2 or 3 months to lay all the new marshalling yard formation of track. Also, we'll just look at this. This is what we did, I think it was 2 weeks on the last video, but this is all dried out now. You'll remember we made this the unmade goods yard surface, and it really, really does look good now. Now everything's dried out, all the different surfaces. There's going to be a lot of these sort of surfaces along these marshalling yards with stagnant ponds and all sorts of stuff. So yeah, that's the track lifting section, with a lot to do. So what we've got here is some of the radio controlled vehicles which are going to feature on the new layout. The one that's I've just been playing around with today is the radio controlled Sherpa van, which some of you can probably just see here. Now this one, again, made by, again, I still haven't got my hand in here yet, but this one has got working brake lights. It's full steering and suspension. And these are, once you've got the hang of them, they're really good fun actually. It's just trying to get used to what's forward and what's backwards. There we go. That's backwards. That's forwards. Oh, managed to get over that hump. But yeah, there's going to be quite a few of these. Some of you will have seen the front loader as well, with its light flashing at the top. This one is the Volvo F12, which works really well. I'm going to show you in the next video, because the tipper, for some reason, I think I pulled the wire out, but the tipper, I'll just bring the camera around and show you. The tipper tips up, so the front loader can fill it with coal, and it can all tip up. The thing is, what I need to do is put some new transfers on here, because NCB is a bit out of era now. I think British Coal still existed up until about 2004. And also the Sherpa van, which we'll have a closer look at. Again, you've got rear brake lights, rear lights, but the brake lights flash on and off as well. And the switch is just underneath. Let's have a look where the switch is. Switch is there. And this works really, really well. It's just a standard O gauge 143. I think it was I featured this before. It's the van off the Spy Who Loved Me Bond film, although the dent in the bonnet's been filled in, and it's just been converted to radio control by Giles Favel with gears and servos and everything else. You can see the gears have been attached there. That's the exhaust, by the way. It's got a gearbox there. Those are the cogs, should I say, not the gears. Those are the gears. And there's a motor inside, and the steering has just all been modified. So it works really, really well. And this one I'm going to rebadge up as Network Rail, or possibly Rail Track. I'll see. I don't know if they were yellow with Network Rail or not, actually. Some of you will be able to tell me. But yeah, there'll be quite a few of these scooting around Heaton Lodge. Giles is currently doing, or has done, I'll be picking that up soon, a couple of these cement mixers, which the drums will rotate. There'll be a flashing beacon on the top, headlights and rear lights as well. So I'm going to have a small team of people who will like to work these radio control vehicles when it goes out to exhibitions. But I think this will just bring lots of life to the layout when they're moving around and going over bridges and through the cement works, etc., etc. But yeah, radio control vehicles. So for those of you who haven't seen it yet, this is the multi-storey car park I've been building in between track laying and everything else and doing the cement factory. It's actually modelled on one in Nottingham, which I saw and looked pretty easy to replicate. So all I've done is I've made it out of balsa, I've made it out of plywood. These uprights you can get from B&Q, they're just strip wood. And the actual car decks are just MDF, which I've sprayed a concrete colour. I've cut sections in here, as you can see, for the ramps. I'm going to smooth those out, obviously, so they're nice and smooth, and put railings around. There's quite a lot to do on this yet. The cars are there, wrong era, but they're just there to make sure I've got the stenciled spaces right on the car decks. But this is looking really good, actually. And Tim Horn, bless him, made me these sides for the multi-storey walls, which again replicate the kind of those streaks down the, I don't know what you call them basically, but you can see that they've got markings, vertical markings all the way down. And Tim made me these, made me quite a few of them, because I've just done this side, as you can see, just done the front, and then I've got this other section to do here yet. So quite a lot to do on this. Inside, we'll just scoot around the back. I'm using the same LED lights, 12-volt ones, that I use. Looks a bit of a mess at the back, but I've attached these to the roofs inside, just covered them actually with masking tape while I sprayed them concrete. But when this is done, it should look really good. That's the access road, which joins on to this next board here, which very randomly then joins when it's pushed up against it. And this is the scenic end, if you like, the very far end of the marshalling yard and the new station section. So just going back to the multi-storey, this will have all the moving barriers. Some of it actually will be underground. As you can see, the access road kind of rises up on a gradient, and the access to the multi-storey will just be by a little road into one of the middle stories with barriers, moving barriers and everything else. So once that's lit up and it's all badged up with NCP or whatever, it should look really good. Bit to do on it yet, but the one thing I found is when you're involved in such a massive project as this, you really need to vary what you're doing all the time, because if you stick with one job like that track lifting I've just covered, you know, and do it for a full day, it drives you mad. And so what I did find, and also one bit of advice, if I may, is if you're ever doing a job on your model railway that you really dislike doing, then don't go home having not finished it, because you won't want to come back to it the next evening or the evening after that. So I always try, in fact, I've made it a rule of mine that when I leave this basement on an evening, I'm doing something I enjoy, because it makes me want to come the next day. It's only a small tidbit, but it really does work for me. Anyway, let's go round to the scenic end that I just mentioned. Tim Horn made me this tunnel, which is actually just covering the section between the marshalling yard and station and the phase 1 of Heaton Lodge, which most of you will have seen, which starts over there. So I've already weathered these bridges. They're made out of that, they're just made out of, what they're made out of? They're made out of MDF, just with kind of blue engineering brick, and I've just put some moss on them. I didn't have to, because obviously I'm not at that stage yet, but it just alleviates some of the boredom sometimes in doing rubbish jobs that I've just mentioned. The platforms here are curved, and what an absolute nightmare these were, because I don't know why I did it really. What I should have done is done the platforms first in a kind of rough way to get the curved shape, and then got the track to follow it. Instead, what I did is laid the track first and then tried to cut the solid wood platforms to fit the curve. And oh God, I was here for absolutely weeks trying to get everything sorted. Still looks a bit of a mess, but it doesn't matter, because it's all going to be covered with Tim Horn's laser cut paving, which is, just move these steps out of the way, laser cut paving, which is going to cover all these platforms, so and make it look pretty good. That's the model that we've covered in a previous video of Dewsbury Station in West Yorkshire. That's the front of the building, as you can see. I've not decided actually whether to put it at the far side, which is where the public will stand, or whether to put it at this side, because what I can't also decide is whether to, so people see the front, which they will do if this building's on the opposite side, or whether they'll see the rear of it and the port, the car kind of garage bit at the side where the taxis used to park, or whether they'll, because that's really good and I want people to see that. So anyway, I'll decide that later on down the line. But as you can see, the track stretches, there's actually 5 tracks, which then merge into 4, and then they go round and join the marshalling yard, which I'm building and which I've covered many times. Now, I was going to have some tracks. This is the other thing, it's so tempting to fill any space with tracks, especially when you're not modelling a prototype. And obviously, as most of you will know, this side is a rendition of West Yorkshire, including a rendition of Healey Mills. So I was going to have a couple of tracks here, which I actually laid, and I've taken them up now because I think what would be much better is to have a really long row of terraced houses, which slightly on a gradient, slightly above the track level, so they're well visible to people looking from the other side. We've covered these massive marshalling yard towers before, of which Steve at Railway Laser Lines made for me, and they're absolutely fantastic. Steve, you're going to get an order for another 5 or 6, as you well know, because this marshalling yard is so long. I think Healey Mills had about 10 or 11 of these. I'm not sure, some of you will know. But the top of it is going to be, I've still got to work out how I'm going to light these, because even though the lighting kind of went in the 80s and 90s, and as most of you will know, we're changing era to the 2000 era plus, hence the Colas Class 60 there. I do want to light these towers because I think lit up and with light shining down, they'll look really good. This is the first part of the bridge, the walk bridge that the loco workers and the staff at Healey Mills used to cross to get to the actual depot itself from an embankment, which is just going to be in this space here. This, by the way, is in the wrong position. It's going to be way further down because the Healey Mills motive power depot, which we covered in the video, I think the last video or the one before, is a bit further down where those rolls of wire are at the end. You can see the power station, you can't miss it really, and the cooling towers are going to be round about where I am. More on the cooling towers probably next week's video because they're progressing as well. Anyway, so that is the marshalling yard. This is where I've got up to with the track laying. Already assembled some of the concrete track here that I'm going to lay, and as I showed you in the first part of the video, the track laying, the track lifting is going on a bit further down there. So onwards and upwards. It's a huge job, and as I've said before, I often come down here and think, what the hell am I doing? But I'm determined to finish it, and well, I will finish it. Might be another 15 months or so, but when it's done, it'll be brilliant. So there we go. That's a bit of a progress update for you. So that's it for this week. Thanks very much for watching again. Please, just remains for me to say, of course, please like and subscribe. Thanks again to those of you that have donated through the crowdfunding campaign, the link of which is in the description. Really grateful to you. It's always a massive help. And yeah, I will see you next week.